Hey guys, tonight we are going to sneak ourselves right into the soft-lit palace of an Egyptian pharaoh, sometime over 3,000 years ago. Don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. Well, okay, if you were actually there, in real life, your odds of survival would be, let's say, slim to none. You'd have the suntanned body of someone used to sandstorms, but the faint bewilderment of someone who still has Wi-Fi fingerprints on their phone. Definitely suspicious. Luckily for you, we're here only in imagination, where nobody will check your passport, your sandals, or your ability to bow at the correct angle. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And since this is half bedtime story, half global slumber party, go ahead and leave a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. Someone out there is listening from a rainy rooftop in London, and someone else is probably under a blanket fort in Australia. And somehow, we are all just sharing the same ancient board game. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The palace around you is hushed, though not silent. Oil lamps stand like sentinels in bronze holders, each flame stretching upward, swaying with a secret rhythm every time a draft snakes past. Shadows flicker against walls, painted with hunting scenes and parade processions illustrations that almost look like they might shuffle out and start moving if you stared too long. A. Servant pads across the polished floor, his sandals squeaking so faintly you wonder if that sound could exist only in dreams. The floor beneath you is cool, stone pressed smooth by centuries of feet, tinged with chill in a way that would make any modern tile floor jealous. You wiggle your own imagined toes against it, noticing with a dry chuckle that if they get too cold, you can just remind yourself that this is all make-believe, and the thermostat is under your control. The air tastes faintly of honey and incense, heavy but warm, drifting lazily around your head. You notice tapestries swaying, not from wind, but from the polite scurrying of attendants who move like well-trained shadows. The pharaoh, though not exactly visible yet, commands presence simply by being implied, kind of like the biggest boss level in a game, except instead of lasers and jumps. The trials here involve trying not to yawn in their presence, or asking impolite questions about why pyramids were so impractical as apartment blocks. Now here's a little fact to tuck under your pillow. Oil lamps like these were not just for light. They often carried aromatic oils, sometimes mixed with herbs, almost like the first bedside candles. Egyptians used them to create a mood, to honor gods, or maybe just to make the palace smell less like humanity in sandals under the sun. And another detail for your snoozy collection. The palace wasn't quiet in the way we imagine quiet. Somewhere far out in the courtyards, late-night stragglers might be cleaning, guards might shuffle to switch duties, and occasionally, perhaps a cat regarded as deeply sacred would pad through like it owned every stone it stepped on, which, in fairness, it probably did. Some historians still wonder what exact balance of grandeur and humanness these palaces contained. Were the pharaohs basking constantly in majestic solitude, draped in ceremony, or were they, at odd hours like this one, just another tired soul, hearing repetitive gossip about which scribe left papyrus out to dry too long? We can't say with certainty. Some written accounts suggest near godlike distance, but enough archaeological hints, personal objects, inscriptions, even doodles scratched into walls to suggest that kingship also came with very human quirks. Meanwhile, you're right here in the still moment, softer than sand dunes after dusk. The flames lick gently higher against their wicks, painting gold pools of warmth against your gaze, and you imagine that you could lean back forever into this gently flickering glow. The funny thing about these lamps is that every so often a wick sputters startlingly loud in the silence. If you had to guess, you'd imagine it as the ancient equivalent of your laptop fan revving unexpectedly during a Zoom call. Not dangerous, but instantly commanding attention. And in your slow chamber walk, those tiny noises seem like secret nudges, reminders that this palace is both alive and sleepy all at once. Asterisk. What you hold on to most right now isn't the title of Pharaoh or the delicate gold jewelry glistening nearby, but the calm weight of history embedding itself like a warm, heavy blanket. It settles over your shoulders, telling you, relax. You're not really expected to rule Egypt tonight. You're just passing through quietly, a guest in someone else's bedtime routine. Asterisk. You inhale again. The oil smoke blends sweetly with frankincense's smell. The ancients believed carried prayers upwards toward higher realms. Whether or not the heavens are listening tonight doesn't matter. What matters is the warmth of the glow, the way each lamp trembles like a candle at a birthday wish. You're standing in that wish now. Asterisk. And so you find yourself within a palace that is both vividly awake and endlessly sleepy. The night air whispers through carved stone doorways, and you sense a night about to drift softly from corridors, through chambers, right into games played beneath twinkling ceilings. The floor cools your souls as you wander into longer halls, where the air stretches itself thinner, like a yawn that refuses to end. Each corridor seems to both welcome you and tease you, stretching farther and farther until you lose track of where you began. If palace architecture had a hobby, it would be confusing visitors gently, never so much that you panic. Just enough that you pause and wonder which painted door might eventually lead to a courtyard, and which one leads to the world's most elaborate broom closet. Asterisk. The walls here are made of limestone, pale and porous, carrying with them thousands of years of patient silence. Torches set high above flicker and spray tiny bursts of shadow across hieroglyphs. You trace some with your eyes, birds standing proudly, oxen pulling plows, zigzagging water lines that look suspiciously like doodles from someone's naptime mathematics notebook. They tell grand tales, but to you, right now, they hum along more like wallpaper, comforting and repetitive. Peacefully undeciphered. Asterisk. Every few steps, the cool stone helps slow your breathing. To modern feet that are used to socks and carpets, it's startling, but eventually, the stone learns your rhythm. You almost think it shifts under your toes, carrying the footfalls like whispers back into the heart of the palace. The hush around you feels less like emptiness and more like someone wrapping the world in thick fabric, muffling reality until only your slow steps exist. Asterisk. And here's a fact that slips in like a guest at the table. In ancient Egyptian homes, even wealthy ones, floors were often made of packed earth. Stone was a luxury, a palace-grade indulgence. You're not just walking. You're trailing over a material that itself spoke of power and permanence. Imagine telling your neighbors back home, "Oh yes, my floors are 40-ton slabs shipped from quarries hundreds of miles away." It's one part luxury, one part impossible brag. Asterisk. Pausing. You notice open stone lattice windows, where the desert night air sneaks in, cooler than you expect. It brushes across your face, faintly sharp, just barely tinged with grains of sand. Desert breezes have a way of reminding you that no matter how many palaces humans build, the desert outside is much older, much larger, and, quite honestly, not all that impressed. Asterisk. A procession of servants moves past in the periphery, steady and unhurried. They carry trays draped with cloth, delicate pottery, and small jars that make a faint clink. The smells following them are sweeter than perfumed dates, preserved figs, something roasted lightly in honey. You don't have to don royal status to appreciate that midnight snacks are a timeless human priority. There's historical precedent here, perhaps the most important one. Elite Egyptians may have spent enormous effort trying to secure eternity in the afterlife, but they also clearly enjoyed a good fig at the right moment. Asterisk. The walls whisper legends too, though in silence. Carved columns rise with papyrus-like shapes, blooming under torchlight. You can't help but imagine them as sleepy guardians. If they had voices, they'd probably scold you softly for dawdling or gossip in low tones about which gods were currently fashionable. Historians still debate to what extent these palace architectural flourishes were mostly decorative versus symbolic. Were the columns meant to literally invite the Nile's lushness indoors? Or did they simply reflect whatever was stylish for royal home decor? The conversation continues, untroubled, and while scholars argue earnestly, the columns tonight are far more interested in leaning lazily toward sleep. Asterisk, you pass a carved doorway and glimpse, fleetingly, a courtyard beyond moonlight dusting the stone like flour on fresh bread. A fountain trickles there, the kind of continuous sound designed to slow thought. In the real world, plumbing systems were complex feats of engineering, with channels diverting Nile waters toward gardens that burst like emerald dreams among the desert. Here and now, though, the most important function of the fountain is just being hypnotic. Its rhythm almost drowsy enough to lull you into standing there indefinitely, half-leaning, until a guard gently coughs and moves you on. Asterisk, the palace itself is labyrinthine, but not unfriendly. It's like a companion who enjoys mildly testing your patience. Perhaps the earliest form of escape rooms, minus the team building and neon padlocks. You grin quietly at the thought. The Pharaoh commissioning a chamber just to see if visitors could manage to find the bathroom on their second try. Asterisk. At one turn in the hall, you notice that the smell has changed. Less honey, more resinous incense, thicker with smoke. Priests likely passed through here by day, scattering powdered scents for ceremonial offerings. Even now, faint traces cling to the walls, as if the air hoards memories, the way sandstone hoards warmth from the daytime sun. Asterisk. And you imagine the echo of voices, deep chants, slow rhythms, words carried across spacious halls where every syllable sounded grander than real life. You pause, letting the echo play out in imagination. The sound seems designed not just for gods, but for ears that required reassurance in vast, daunting palaces at night. Asterisk. But now, the chant fades, and only you walk onward, bare feet softened by smooth stone. It's tempting to think of yourself as trespasser, but in this slow passage, you are more dreamer than intruder. The palace has folded you into its nightly rhythm the way pages fold into a heavy book. Asterisk. The question still lingers, what was it really like to walk these very halls? Some historians argue palaces were bustling centers of non-stop activity, even at night. Others maintain that, under torchlight, peace reigned, and noise dwindled to only the most essential steps. Which theory is right? There's no clear answer, though tonight, the stones award you the gift of stillness. Asterisk. And so, through long corridors patterned with torches, you go deeper still, like sleep itself calling you from one hallway into the next, until the promise of something quieter, something acutely personal pulls you toward the guarded heart of the Pharaoh's own chambers. You step into a quieter corridor, its entrance framed by heavy doors painted with golden flourishes. The passage feels more intimate now, narrower, and the torches burn lower, as if even fire itself has lowered its voice. A servant stationed by the entryway glances at you with just enough disinterest to let you pass. Apparently, when you exist as a half-imagined visitor, you're not worth causing a commotion about. Asterisk. The air here is heavier with perfume, and immediately you sense that you're close to the private quarters. The scent of cedar wood mixed with lilies, and underneath it, all a teasing sweetness that keeps tugging you toward something hidden. You walk further, careful not to let your hesitant steps echo too loudly. In stories like these, it's always possible that someone extremely important is napping nearby, and waking them would never end well. Imagine trying to explain your presence. Oh, don't mind me. I drifted in from the future. No big deal. Asterisk. The polished floor tiles form careful geometric patterns now, more intricate than the plain slabs of the public hall. Here's a historical nugget worth remembering. Elite Egyptians thought of balance and harmony not just in art, but in the very geometry of their everyday spaces. Rooms weren't merely containers, you could argue they were more like living compositions. But tonight, geometry isn't intimidating. The shapes only seem to lull your eyes into gentle zigzagging, slower and slower, as if you've been hypnotized by long straight lines. Asterisk ahead of you, an arched doorway draped by woven linen curtains. They sway as though a soft breeze has a mind of its own, but when you pass through, you realize it is cool air drifting from deep within the chamber itself. And there he is, the pharaoh settled not on a grand throne of ceremony, but reclined, his body eased into carved wooden furniture that's every bit as opulent, yet somehow humanizing in its comfort. Asterisk, now, don't let your pulse trip too fast. You're not standing trial. This is more akin to walking into someone's private lounge. Though the lounge just happens to smell like myrrh and be painted with murals of battles you did not request to witness. Around him are silken linens, dyed with colors pulled from exotic trade networks. Indigo, carmine, gold threads snaked through, like lightning frozen in fabric. It's history's version of luxury bedding, and you suppress the urge to politely request a product link. Asterisk, here's a curious fact to place like a bead on the necklace of night. Egyptian pharaohs did indeed possess ornate furniture, from carved chairs to footstools adorned with enemy figures. Yes, they literally rested their feet on depictions of rival subtlety was not the goal. But their beds, carved of wood, would be inlaid with ivory or even gilded, and often stretched taut with woven rope. If you've ever bounced on a hammock in summer, you have something in common with royalty, minus the gold leaf accent work. Asterisk, the pharaoh doesn't rise when he notices you. Instead, he gestures languidly, like someone both deeply aware of his own authority and yet far too relaxed to make his authority your immediate problem. He offers a half smile, which you decide to take as a sign of good fortune. He might just be amused at the sight of your modern confusion. Loose jaw, wide eyes, an expression that says, did I just walk into the bedtime chamber of divine kingship? Behind him, carved wooden stools hold small objects, perfume vessels, combs, a game board, and next to it, polished pieces stacked like sleeping toy soldiers. But that comes later. For now, your attention lingers on the chamber itself. The ceiling rises higher than you expected, painted midnight blue and littered with gold stars. At dusk, those tiny constellations would shimmer in lamplight, creating the illusion of an eternal night sky indoors. Sleep beneath painted stars. It seems not only possible, but preferable. And suddenly modern ceiling fans feel entirely underwhelming. Historians debate the degree of privacy a pharaoh had. Did attendants hover constantly, managing every subtle motion of his daily life? Or was solitude measured in rare stolen hours, valued as treasure itself? Tonight you glimpse both, the faint bustling of a servant entering, offering fruit, then bowing out again, almost invisibly, leaving behind the slow tickle of pomegranate scent. Yet the pharaoh sits clearly at ease, enjoying a luxurious pause in which nothing pressing seems to intrude. And then there's the laughter, not loud, but soft, nearly private. Not yours, not the servants. The pharaoh himself chuckles at something you can't quite catch. Maybe it was the thought of an earlier conversation with priests, or maybe it was the sheer joy of collapsing into bed with ceremonial sandals finally removed. The humor is disarming. Pharaohs were gods on earth, yes. But here's the whisper nobody carves on monumental inscriptions. Gods, too, must stretch their toes and allow themselves a bedtime grin. It makes you consider, were rulers at their most human just before sleep, surrounded by textiles and close comforts, instead of court ceremonies? Some historians wonder whether these settings were carefully staged chambers decorated to reinforce divinity even in private spaces, or whether somewhere between the incense burners and board games. Royal life allowed glimpses of normalcy. Perhaps this very chamber held both a god-king prepared for eternity, and a weary man sighing after a long day of being worshipped. Asterisk, the linens settle quietly. Shadows dance longer across the room, and your eyelids wander with them. For one dreamy moment, you sense the stillness of eternal history itself, cradling you like a second bed. The Pharaoh exhales, content and trustful of the silence, and you realize you're being welcomed, not as a trespasser, but as a silent companion in the hush of his chamber. Asterisk, the Pharaoh's chamber is content in its stillness, but your eyes are drawn toward that curious object resting on a nearby low table, a rectangular board, carved with both precision and a sense of mystery, decorated with squares that seem to whisper, asterisk, play me, if you dare. Asterisk, of course. Dare here doesn't mean peril in the sword-on-chariot sort of way. It's closer to the dare of playing Monopoly with your entire family and hoping everyone is still speaking. Afterward, asterisk, this is the legendary asterisk Senet, asterisk, one of the world's oldest known board games, a pastime so enduring that even fragments of its wooden boards have been found far older than many monuments still standing. Imagine humanity's obsessions lined up: fire, bread, wheels, and then immediately, of course, the need for evening entertainment, because apparently, civilization cannot thrive on agriculture alone. It needs game night. Asterisk, the Pharaoh notices your interest, and a wry little smile tugs at his lips. He gestures with a half-wave, the kind that communicates both invitation asterisk and asterisk unspoken confidence that, should you accept, you will almost certainly lose. Lucky for you, there are no real consequences here. At worst, you'll feel spectacularly clumsy at moving pebbles across a grid. At best, you'll share a starry ceiling with someone who ruled the Nile and still had time to sigh at game pieces, the same way you sigh at mismatched puzzle pieces. Asterisk. The wooden board gleams faintly in the lamplight. Its length holds 3 rows of 10 squares each, making 30 in total, though not every square is equal. Some glow with significance, painted in faint dye, or etched in patterns that feel like secret road signs. They say, here, good things happen, or, more mischievously, careful, you might be going backward. Where today you might encounter a game with cartoon illustrations, or a card that says, lose a turn. Here symbols carry spiritual weight heavy enough to suggest your moves could echo into eternity. Asterisk. And indeed, here's your factual bedtime gift. Senet wasn't just a game. Over time, it evolved into a ritual linked to the soul's movement through the afterlife. Winning wasn't only about outsmarting your opponent. It could mean symbolically guiding your spirit past challenges, through cosmic obstacles, ultimately toward eternity with the gods. Imagine trying to relax with a little dice game before bed, only to realize you're also casually rehearsing your post-death travel itinerary. Asterisk. But here's the quirky detail. The early versions of archaeologists believe may have started as a straightforward race game, not loaded with so much religious meaning. It's as if ancient Egypt's version of Candyland slowly transformed into a divine manual for eternal victory. Historians still debate whether ordinary Egyptians played it mostly for fun, or whether everyone leaned into the spiritual significance each time. The pieces shuffled forward. Asterisk. Now the pharaoh reaches across, gently placing ivory pieces upon the board. His hands are practiced. This is not ceremonial pomp, but muscle memory, like reaching for tea after a long day. The clink of the game pieces against the polished wood is strangely satisfying, a soft, rhythmic click that could practically pass as the ASMR of the late Bronze Age. If you close your eyes, you could almost forget where you are, imagining yourself waiting for your friend to roll dice, sipping sleepy tea, and idly tapping your toes. Asterisk. But instead of dice, the pharaoh produces what look like small flat sticks. each with markings on one side. These are not dice in the conventional sense, but throw sticks, which fall in various ways to produce outcomes like rolling. It's charmingly tactile, no glowing screens, number notifications distracting you, just wood hitting wood, with suspense measured in a whisper of silence before the sticks land. Asterisk. The floor shifts cool beneath your toes as you kneel closer to the board. The geometry, suddenly less abstract, becomes immediate. Tiny carved pawns, lined up neatly, each awaiting their miniature journey across the painted grid. The Pharaoh doesn't speak. His gaze says enough. Asterisk. Let's see if you understand how eternity works when it's reduced to 30 squares and a few lucky throws. Asterisk. You're tempted to laugh at the dramatic stakes implied, but the air holds a certain seriousness. Asterisk. Your hand hovers over a piece. You expect it to feel ordinary, but history has weight. Even in imagination, you can sense the presence of thousands of years of human hands before you, sliding pawns across squares with excitement, frustration, or desperate hope. The edges of the board are polished silk. Someone once poured skill into this little rectangle in the hope that play itself might outlive them, and in a way, it did. Asterisk. One important practical observation. Senet wasn't a game that ended quickly. Depending on how moves went, the pieces could shuffle around longer than you'd like, almost like a precursor to a card game, where you're convinced the universe just wants it to last forever. Which makes sense. What better for a game deeply tied with notions of eternity than to last, well, eternally. Asterisk. Historians still wonder about the exact rules. Fragments of instructions survive, but the rest is reconstructed by modern guesswork. Did pawns leap or glide? Was there a best strategy? Or did the house cat knocking a piece onto the floor count as divine intervention? Some researchers lean toward strategic racing. Others insist its later religious overlay must have infused the mechanics with symbolism. The lack of certainty remains part of its mystery. The game is studied, but never fully solved. Asterisk. And so, under painted stars and a pharaoh's steady eyes, you learn the beginnings of Senet, not simply a board game, but a soft heartbeat of history echoing across time. A game made for both laughter and destiny, and right now, for gently coaxing you deeper into the lull of the night. The Pharaoh, still lounging with the kind of casual confidence only millennia of divine authority can bestow, slides one of the ivory pieces across the polished squares with a soft click. The sound seems barely louder than a spoon tapping porcelain. You freeze slightly, realizing the ruler of millions has just challenged you to the gentlest midnight duel in history, a duel where the worst outcome is mild embarrassment, far preferable to chariots and sandstorms. Really? You pick up one of your own pawns. It feels cool, as though it was storing night air inside its ivory body. Tentatively, you set it down in the starting row, careful not to drop it, because you really don't want to be remembered as that time traveler who clumsily dented the Pharaoh's favorite pastime. The Pharaoh smirks, not cruelly, more with the look of someone who's played against plenty of overconfident courtiers before. That's the thing about bedtime games. Humility arrives much faster than victory. The sticks are shuffled, rattling softly in the gilded bowl before they scatter across the table. Their clatter is unlike dice, more hollow, more whispery, as though wood chooses its number based on mood. Tonight they seem generous to you, granting a friendly move forward. You breathe, perhaps a bit too triumphantly. The Pharaoh arches an eyebrow, amused that his visitor from far away clearly delights in beginner's luck. Now, here's one undeniable fact to fold into your mental journal. Pharaohs adored gaming. They weren't solitary warriors always wrapped in divine ceremony. Archaeologists have discovered Senet boards in royal tombs, objects placed alongside treasures, because entertainment wasn't just for life, but also for eternity. To an Egyptian mind, existence after death needed the comforts of familiarity. and a long game could help pass infinite time. Asterisk, and here comes the playful, lesser-known detail. Senet boards sometimes doubled as multifunction games. Some had grids carved on their reverse sides, with evidence suggesting they might have been flipped to play different race-style games altogether. Ancient Egyptians were, in short, carrying around convertible gaming systems, which made your modern console look almost unimaginative. Game cartridge, please. Their board itself was the cartridge. Asterisk. The pharaoh makes his next move. The piece slides elegantly forward, and suddenly you're staggered by how seriously this could feel. The silence in the chamber shifts, thickening into a velvet sort of weight, as though Osiris himself is leaning over your shoulder, whispering, asterisk, do not embarrass yourself. Asterisk, your hand hovers nervously. You're reminded of every nerve you've ever felt when pulling a card in Uno. The stakes may be symbolic, but the butterflies in your stomach are hilariously real. Asterisk, the thing is, it isn't just about competition. With every turn, you sense the game stretching into something meditative. The rhythm of placing, tossing, sliding it soothes like a heartbeat. Perhaps that was the hidden charm of royal game nights. Not victory, not even strategy, but the trance created by deliberate, unhurried motion, shared between company under painted ceilings. Asterisk, outside the chamber, you imagine courtiers still pacing softly, guards yawning against their spears. But here at the pharaoh's side, life simplifies itself to the progress of tiny figures across squares carved thousands of years ago. You begin to think this is how eternity sneaks in, not with thunder, but with repetition, with rituals small enough to comfort sleep. Every move is just the echo of someone long before you, playing the same clicks and slides. Their laughter, or groans, etched invisibly into invisible night air. Asterisk, and yet scholars have puzzled over, asterisk, exactly asterisk, how significant this ritual was. Was every midnight match a rehearsal for navigating dangers of the underworld? Or was it sometimes just a bored evening, where even rulers wanted that sweet distraction from the weariness of politics? Historians still wonder if every role was taken as sacred, or if some sessions ended with best of three. Winner keeps the last date cake. Asterisk, the pharaoh is leaning closer now, elbow on armrest, lips curved with a grin. You realize something disarming. He is not treating this as ceremony. He's simply enjoying himself. And suddenly, so are you. Moves blur, pawns advance and retreat, destiny weaving itself across squares, while the room breathes with incense. Your shoulders slump and commure, not even sure if winning matters anymore. Asterisk, and that, perhaps, was always the secret. The board game wasn't about chess-like intellect or domination. It was about creating a shared horizon, a space where divine kings could exist not as gods, but as companions in a soft game under flickering lamps. Eternity, whether in victory or loss, would wait. Tonight was about the sigh of release that comes with clicking ivory against wood, until the rest of the world dims and you wonder if you're dozing, even as your fingers hold your pawn steady. Asterisk, asterisk. The pharaoh leans back in his chair now, adjusting the linen folds of his robe as if to signal that, while strategy matters, comfort comes first. Your eyes return to the slim sticks he has picked up, smooth and pale, their edges worn shiny. They are not dice in the clattering, cube-shaped sense you're used to, but something older, more organic, halfway between a ladle stirrer and the sort of craft supply that would live lonely in your drawer until the day you declared, I asterisk might asterisk do woodworking. Asterisk, the ruler tosses them gently against the polished wooden surface. They roll with a faint rattle, then land with different faces, turned upward marks on one side, nothing on the other. The number of upturned marked sides decides how far a pawn can travel. To modern ears, it seems like an odd way to handle chance, but to an Egyptian hand, this was familiar as breathing. Their clicks and flutters form the rhythm of possibility itself, like the palace's own heartbeat made audible. Asterisk, And in this airy mix of history and drowsiness, you catch a fact worth tucking into your blanket of knowledge. Egyptian gaming pieces were sometimes carved from ivory, wood, or even faience, that sparkling blue-green ceramic that suggested eternity. By extension, the bones of chance itself, the throw sticks, were crafted with care too. Amusement wasn't shabby, it was dressed to impress, even divine. Asterisk, now to the quirky detail. Other variations existed. Archaeologists have found what appear to be knuckle bones, a type of protodice, in various regions, showing up in Egypt too, though usually in commoner contexts. Imagine sitting in this chamber, tossing decorated sticks that dictated destiny's flow, while farmers in the village below might be casually gambling over sheep bones at the same hour. High stakes in one chamber, playful pastime in another. Somehow humanity has always needed randomness to stir up its evenings. Asterisk, the pharaoh gathers the sticks again, eyes glinting like flickering oil lamps. If you're honest, you half expect him to lean in and whisper best 2 out of 3. He doesn't, but the amused weight in the air is the same. He tosses the sticks to you, their tips clattering faintly in your palm. It takes a moment to remember there's no perfect technique. Just toss them and wait for fate to chuckle in your direction. Asterisk. You do, awkwardly, releasing them together in a stumble more than a throw. They scatter across the board, landing with 1, 2, 3 marked sides up, a decent roll. You move your pawn forward under the pharaoh's patient gaze. Perhaps, you wonder, he sees his own eternal journey, foreshadowed in these sticks. Or perhaps, he sees only an eager stranger, fumbling with ceremonial kindling. Both seem plausible. Asterisk, the sound of sticks flicking down becomes hypnotic after a while. Toss, pause, slide. Toss, pause, slide. You could swear it matches your own breathing. A rhythm begins to draw itself over the chamber, not urgent, not anxious, only gentle. Every fall of wood is a small reminder that life is chance as much as intention. Asterisk, and here's the historian's wrinkle. We aren't entirely sure if the specific throwing method you're using is identical to how it was done 3,000 years ago. Did players flick the sticks, drop them from height, or simply cast them lazily across the board? Archaeological sources offer images, but not necessarily high-definition instructions. Scholars still guess, patching details together from scraps of text, scenes painted on tomb walls, and the outcomes we can assume from marked pawns. Tonight's game exists in that dreamy, gap-informed guesswork, mixed with gentle imagination. Asterisk, the pharaoh moves again, and your attention lingers on the ritualistic quality of his gesture. The sticks don't just define moves, they feel like vessels of mystery, tiny wooden translators between chance and intention. You suddenly realize that the board game is slowing you down, not just through gameplay, but in how deliberate it makes every muscle of your hand become. No rushing, no frantic tossing. The sticks demand patience, as though eternity isn't earned quickly, but square by square, throw by throw. Asterisk, which raises a question that scholars often debate. How much was the outcome believed to be preordained by gods? And how much was it just plain probability? Were ancient players thinking, well, Hathor clearly favors me tonight? Or were they secretly muttering, why do the sticks hate me? We'll never know which was whispered more often in lamplight. Asterisk, but here's what you do know. From your privileged seat, at this quiet, midnight table, the soft sound of wood, the warm glow of oil lamps, the pharaoh's amused company, and the painted ceiling overhead are already blending into a lullaby. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. This game is playing asterisk you. Asterisk, the rhythm of clattering sticks dissolves into a gentle dance with sleep itself. The rhythm of sticks and sliding pieces slows, softening into a lull that feels less like competition and more like drifting. The pawns rest lightly on their squares now, scattered across the board like miniature wanderers on an ancient journey. You lean closer, curious about the markings on certain squares, special ones. The painted or etched figures that seem to pulse faintly in the lamp, they're not just decoration. They carry weight. Asterisk. The pharaoh taps one of them with his ringed finger, the gesture part instruction, part gentle tease. This, he seems to say, is where fate takes a curious turn, because in Senet, not every square is equal. Some will favor you, acting like cheerful doormen, waving you along toward victory. Others, however, are the real tricksters of the grid, sending your pawn backward and undoing progress you were so sure was secure. Asterisk. A widely known fact slides into your lap here. Ancient Egyptians recorded several lucky and unlucky squares in Senet's layout. The 26th square often stood for joy or resurrection, a promise of passing freely. The 27th could mean trouble, a snag of fate slowing you down. And then there was the all-important 30th square, a space akin to the finish line, where passing over might symbolize sliding into eternity itself. Every game thus became more than strategy. It became symbolic rehearsal for the soul's obstacles and triumphs. Asterisk. The quirky detail that makes you smile. Some versions of the board contain squares with phrases like House of Water or House of Repetition. These weren't charming vacation homes on the Nile. They were spaces where pawns could get stuck or forced to shuffle endlessly until fortune turned friendlier. Imagine making it through a cosmic game, only to stumble idly at the House of Water, eternally waiting for good luck to push you out. Eternal board game. Purgatory, truly the stuff of bedtime philosophy. Asterisk. The pharaoh moves his piece to a designated lucky square, tilting his head just enough to let you know this moment is partly intentional and partly cosmic theater. You can hear the swipe of wood over wood, the satisfying whisper of completion in a small gesture. When it's your turn, you nearly hold your breath, tossing the sticks, as though the entire afterlife has paused to watch where your pawn will land. Asterisk. It tumbles forward. The new spot, one of the ambiguous ones, neither dazzlingly kind nor cruelly catastrophic. The pharaoh chuckles. Maybe he knows something you don't. Tor. Maybe he simply enjoys watching history toy lightly with your nerves. Asterisk. Scholars still debate how standardized these special meanings were. Was there one universal rulebook that every Senet board obeyed, like a sacred user's manual? Or did the symbolism shift depending on temple, household, or century? Some boards hint at cosmology, others lean toward folkloric flavor. What feels certain is that the act of pausing on these squares forced players, whether king or villager, to hesitate and reflect, if only for a flicker of torch flame. Asterisk. And as you sit in this chamber, you notice how icily time stretches and coagulates around the game. A single pawn hovering on an unlucky square feels like suspense magnified into eternity. A single forward leap into a resurrected square feels not unlike someone lighting a fresh candle. You half expect the ceiling stars themselves to twinkle more brightly each time a piece finds favorable progress. Asterisk. It occurs to you, as your breathing sinks into the rhythm, that perhaps this is how myths about living forever were kept close to the heart, not through speeches or inscriptions alone, but through ordinary pawns, patiently moving until their journey collapsed into the symbolic promise of continuance. Asterisk. The air smells faintly sweeter now. Attendants have placed resin in the oil lamps, and its warm fragrance creeps across the chamber like a blanket. Combined with the click of pieces, it draws you steadily toward quiet. You realize suddenly that this isn't a game merely to pass the hours. It's a ritual designed to slow the very pulse of time, to deepen the night, until the transition toward dreams feels seamless. Asterisk. So you watch the pharaoh glide his pawn forward, his bronze bracelets jingling softly in counterpoint. He isn't pressing for triumph. You realize he too is simply letting the board drift him toward sleep, step by step, lucky square by lucky square, unfolding eternity inside 30 carved rectangles. Asterisk. Somewhere in the blur of moves and pauses, The board gains a companion and a rival, so delightful, your senses perk up like cats, hearing the crackle of snack wrappers. Servants step softly into the chamber, carrying trays faintly steaming in the lamplight. The clatter of bronze bowls and wooden platters cuts through the thickened silence. For a moment, before bowing back again into hush, what's on the trays? Midnight treats, because what is a game night without snacks? Apparently, royalty thought the same. Asterisk. The air thickens soon, with the buttery sweetness of baked honey cakes. Miniature triangular pieces gleaming with syrup under the flicker of lamps. Their scent sidles up close, sneaking into your nostrils like a lullaby disguised as sugar. Fresh figs, glossy and dark, nestle beside them, split just enough to offer glimpses of pink-red flesh within. A jug of grape wine waits on one side, accompanied by pomegranate juice for gentler drinkers. You're relieved. It's nice to know the Pharaoh didn't enforce mandatory heavy drinking clauses during friendly matches. Asterisk. Here's a historical reality. You can tuck smugly under your blanket, like contraband candy. Egyptians adored honey. In fact, honey was seen as the food of the gods, often used in rituals, medicine, and as sweetener, long before sugar was widespread. Bakers whipped up honey cakes, breads, and even chewy, candy-like bites, meant to delight both noble and humble alike. If you were at an Egyptian banquet, chances are you'd end the night with sticky fingers and a satisfied sigh. Asterisk. The quirky detail to delight you further. There's evidence Egyptians treasured certain asterisk imported delicacies, asterisk as well, such as figs from the Levant, or wine from Canaan, while common folk downed beer daily, like liquid bread. Elite households indulged in wines, flavored sometimes with resins or herbs. So essentially, your midnight spread tonight is the royal version of We Have Snacks and Beverages, featuring items shipped in from multiple postal codes or, rather, dessert treks. Asterisk. The Pharaoh grabs one of the small cakes without shame. It collapses slightly in his fingers, leaving syrup glistening near his jeweled rings. He cares not. You realize again, gods or not, everyone deserves dessert. He offers the tray toward you, giving you that peculiar raised eyebrow look of a man who suspects you might never have eaten anything finer. You accept, pulling one close. The cake is soft, yielding, sticky. The first bite bursts with warmth, sugar brightness, and earthy grain. Richer than anything you remembered expecting. Asterisk. You chew slowly, letting this imagined ancient pastry melt like a cloud around your tongue. Perhaps it's dream logic, but you swear the flavors echo the ambience. The grainy sweetness tastes like painted stars overhead, the honey like the torchlight, the fruit like cool, desert air pressing at the windows. Asterisk. You chuckle softly, realizing how eternal this moment feels. Board games and snacks. Families today still gather around tables with bites nearby, humming through hours, mixing competition with indulgence. Maybe the secret to humanity's continuity is not monuments or kingship, but the insistence that any gathering is better with food round the corner of the board. Asterisk. Your breath slows, comforted by aromas, now weaving together in the chamber, the nutty warmth of bread, the syrup's dense sweetness, the faint floral smoke still curling from lamps. Your eyelids stretch heavier at the thought of second helpings, the lull of satisfaction pulling at your body. Outside the chamber, you imagine the Nile itself exhaling its coolness, while here the air holds a different river, flowing scents that carry you quietly toward dreaming. Asterisk. Historians still debate how formal these palace meals really were. Were midnight snacks like this staged for repose? Or is our dreamy reconstruction romanticizing what may have been little more than quick bites during planning sessions, where courtiers scribbled notes between figs? Some argue pharaohs tightly reserved personal luxuries for themselves, not their company. Others see hints of shared platters, evidence of selective generosity. The mystery, as always, remains, though tonight, you're lucky enough to accept the offering yourself. Asterisk, the servants slip away as quietly as they came, leaving behind nothing but the aroma, the lingering taste on your tongue, and that gleaming board frozen mid-game between two drowsy opponents. The Pharaoh leans into his chair more lazily now, stretching like a satisfied cat. He pops the final bite of cake into his mouth, not caring that syrup stains the edge of his robe that, you suspect, is an attendance tomorrow problem. Asterisk, somewhere in this haze of sweetened air, you realize the game has slowed almost to stillness. Eternity, it seems, is unhurried, preferring to savor both pawns and pastries along the way. The honey cakes dissolve into memory, leaving behind their sticky warmth, and for a moment, the palace feels suspended in syrupy stillness. The Pharaoh stretches, one elbow resting on his carved chair, and your own gaze drifts upward. That's when you notice the ceiling, the wide, endless surface painted deep indigo blue, scattered with golden accents shaped like stars. It's not just decoration. It's a sky transplanted indoors. A map of the heavens gathered neatly above royal pillows. Asterisk, lamplight flickers against the painted constellations, tricking your eyes into imagining the stars actually shimmering. The longer you stare, the more you're convinced the ceiling is, in quiet conversation with the real desert sky outside. Painted Orions and spiral clusters blink back at you with a sleepy rhythm, as though reminding you of eternity's patient pulse. It's simultaneously small, just a roof above you, and impossibly vast, hinting at all the nights sky watchers tilted their heads the very same way. Asterisk, a keeper of the chamber pads in briefly and adjusts one of the lamps on a side shelf. In the glow, your imagination washes over you, lying flat on a cushioned mat here, bathed in warmth, eyes dizzied by an artificial galaxy. You don't need NASA-grade telescopes. You only need pigments and ambition. That was the Egyptian wonder, eternity within reach, brought down onto plaster ceilings so the Pharaoh could fall asleep under an everlasting copy of the cosmos. Asterisk, historical nugget time. Many royal tombs and palaces featured ceilings decorated as star charts. Specific constellations were painted not simply for beauty, but as symbolic guarantees of cosmic order. The sky was a calendar, a protector, a map. Some tombs have ceilings painted with Nut, the sky goddess, her arching body speckled with stars like an eternal canopy. You are, quite literally, staring into divine fabric. Asterisk, here's the quirky aside. Some ceilings weren't strictly faithful maps. Instead, they were artistic montages of stars. Here's astronomy at work, and more. Here's my personal celestial wallpaper. Imagine you carefully ask an ancient artisan to reproduce the heavens, only to find they added extra sparkles, because your ceiling just looks nicer that way. Practical accuracy had its place, but art and atmosphere sometimes won out. Asterisk, the Pharaoh follows your gaze upward. For an instant he, too, lingers in dream-laden stillness, as though the painted stars whisper almost more directly to him. Kingship didn't give immunity from fatigue. Even God's own earth-heated constellations for comfort needed that lull of pattern and repetition to quiet thoughts before sleep. The air is so thickly silent that when he exhales, you swear his breath alone causes one golden star to quiver. Asterisk, it makes you wonder, did pharaohs spend long minutes like this, tranquil on couches, staring into their painted night skies as a ritual before rest? Was this their private time of reflection, or merely ornate decor that went unnoticed in weary evenings? Historians offer their guesses, but no one can tell for certain. Were ceilings meditated upon? Were they simply backgrounds, like the wallpaper you've stopped noticing in your own room? Tonight, in dream space, the ceiling sings like a lullaby. Asterisk, the longer your gaze clings to the golden stars overhead, the sleepier you feel. Your eyelids mimic their glow, batting open and closed. The slow rhythm of pawns clicking against wood melts now into the rhythm of distant eternities. Cycles measured through stars, not clocks. Torch smoke curls upward into the painted sky, momentarily shading a cluster, then dissipates, like shooting stars fading behind your eyelids. Asterisk, by the time you tilt your chin back downward, reality itself feels softer. The board, the pharaoh, the chamber, they've slipped into friendship with the painted heavens. And you, wandering dreamer, are caught in between, grounded by polished stone beneath bare feet, but drifting with constellations painted by hands long gone, ancient or modern. You realize, this was always humanity's trick for bedtime. Tell yourself the sky is near, and let stars, whether painted or real, sing you to sleep. Asterisk, asterisk. Your eyes linger on the painted heavens, until without hurry, they wander back down to the little wooden soldiers waiting on the board. But this time, the pawns feel different. They don't just look like carved ivory or faience anymore. They hold presence, as though invisible eyes are tunneling through them, watching the game unfold. The pharaoh notices your pause and almost smirks knowingly. Yes, this isn't just about chance rolls now. The gods are hovering, and you've stepped into their favorite late-night pastime. Asterisk, one pawn lands softly on a marked square, and in that instant, you recall what every cautious scribe whispered. The game of Senet was entwined with the divine. Each move could symbolize a spirit's journey through the underworld. Every hesitation on those unlucky houses, such as the House of Water, the House of Repetition, was more than inconvenience. It hinted at a soul's testing. A stumble here might mean the gods were nudging you, politely suggesting you improve your spiritual homework before eternity. Nothing like a little cosmic pep talk in board game form. Asterisk, the pharaoh lifts his palm. His amber eyes study the board, but you sense he is gazing beyond wood and ivory. Far deeper, his stare stretches into metaphor. When he moves his piece, it's not just about jostling you closer to defeat. It's about alignment, ritual, turning squares into cosmic passageways. You realize a rush of gravity has arrived. The air thickens like woven linen, textured with silence. Even the flickering lamps flare brighter, just briefly, as though Ra himself had leaned down to check the score. Asterisk. Here's an actual fact to anchor you. Senet boards frequently appeared in burial goods. Kings like Tutankhamun had luxurious versions buried with them, ensuring they could continue playing in the afterlife. It wasn't simply a diversion, it became practical spiritual equipment, like packing pajamas for a trip. A soul would glide past obstacles with the game as practice, squares as guideposts, destiny mapped step for step. Asterisk, and the quirky nugget tonight. Some boards bore artwork of gods or prayers scratched directly across squares. This wasn't standard for every set, but hints that some versions blurred game and liturgy completely. A pawn landing near an inscription of Osiris or Ra wasn't mere symbolism. It was like brushing elbows with the divine during Tuesday game night. Half ritual, half entertainment, all ingeniously human. Asterisk, as you play alongside the pharaoh, your movements falter. Every slide suddenly feels watched. It dawns on you how deeply Egyptians trusted their worlds to intertwine. Play could be religion. Laughter could be philosophy. A soft pawn's click could mean eternal freedom. The gods weren't out in unreachable heavens, only they were invited onto the board itself, where mortals and divinities took turns moving tiny carved tokens. Asterisk, you pause mid-move, stick hovering, and glance upward at the painted ceiling again. Stars above, squares below, both serving as maps to eternity. The pharaoh chuckles faintly at your hesitation, gently rolling his own sticks with flawless poise, as though accustomed to the company of silent gods. For him, perhaps, this is less unusual than it is for you. After all, what's the point of being divine on Earth if you can't casually invite the pantheon to join your board game session? Asterisk, what historians still wonder, though, is whether every ruler sat with such solemnity when gaming. Were all sessions woven into cosmic rehearsal, or were some merely leisure evenings that only later acquired sacred reputation? Did priests lean in to infuse mysticism around what began as casual pastime? The debate rolls on, scattered like the sticks themselves, never quite landing in a final position. But here, in this chamber, you feel both truths at once, the warmth of play and the weight of eternity. A pawn, edging forward, feels like the slow lift of a sunrise, a breath of fortune. A piece forced backward feels like RA setting behind the horizon, and through each shift, the gods smile faintly from their invisible perches, bemused at mortals who learn humility square by square. The Pharaoh slides another piece forward, bracelets chiming softly. He glances at you with a look that asks nothing but, isn't this better than sleepless pacing? And though you never speak, the silent answer hums louder than words. Yes, it is. Sweet repetition. Divine company. A game where the gods themselves play bedtime companions. The chamber hums faintly with its own quiet rhythm, now lamps flickering, pawns clicking, your breath steadying. You lean back slightly, letting your shoulders sag against the weighted air. The game unfolds, but the mood has shifted yet again. The longer you sit here, the more you realize Senet isn't just playful competition or even symbolic rehearsal. It's also a conversation piece, a way for people to think aloud about mysteries they could never solve in daylight politics. Someone nearby whispers, not loudly, but enough for words to trickle into your imagination. The attendants, careful not to disturb the Pharaoh directly, carry hushed tones of gossip. One scribe bends close to another, murmuring that Senet is more than pastime, it's a rehearsal for leaving this world entirely. They glance at the Pharaoh, as if remembering that one day from high throne to painted ceiling he too will slip into the currents of eternity. A board game, then, is no small thing when it doubles as eternal roadmap. Here lies the fact like a stone hidden in a pillow. Egyptian writings describe Senet as the passing game, the movement across squares interpreted as guiding the soul around barriers, through safe houses of rebirth, and eventually into the field of reeds, the paradise of afterlife, where gentle breezes blow. Winning didn't merely earn bragging rights, it granted reassurance that one could survive eternity's obstacles. And here's the quirk. Not every player took it this way. Some likely rolled eyes or sticks at overly spiritualized interpretations, treating Senet as simply game night. Think of how you might mutter sarcastically, Jenga is a metaphor for life, man, while just trying not to drop wooden blocks. In some chambers, perhaps philosophical debates arose over a good roll. In others, only cheerful groans. You slide one of your pawns forward daringly, landing onto a symbolic square that hints at resurrection. The Pharaoh nods, not big, but enough to show approval at your lucky stumble. For him, perhaps, it confirms the gods are pleased with you. For you, perhaps, it means you're still surviving bedtime without offending eternity. Both are satisfying interpretations. The whispering turns weightier in the background. A courtier dares to mention softly that these same squares also warn of watery pitfalls. One unlucky stop could mean eternal, drowning your spirit, delayed in the cosmic marshes, desperately waiting for another throw to move forward. You glance at your pawn nervously, wondering whether your throw sticks should come with tiny life preservers. The air shifts again, not frightening, but solemn, like an ancient bedtime story told with dim voices and meaningful pauses. Historians still puzzle over how widely Egyptians believed this connection between gameplay and the spirit world. Did children learn Senet as bedtime fun and only later understand its cosmic extent? Or was every small game, even among commoners, an echo of metaphysical concern? We will likely never know if a boy in Thebes in 1300 BCE rolled sticks only for joy, or if a chill ran up his spine once his pawn reached a house of repetition. Your eyelids feel heavier as you roll again. The sticks clatter gently, and the pawns shuffle, inching forward with the kind of incremental progress only eternity can teach. You begin to drift slightly inward, your own thoughts growing loose and dreamlike, which is exactly the point. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with ensuring safe passage after death. In a strange reversal, sitting beside a god king, you realize safe passage right now means drifting closer toward sleep. The Pharaoh exhales a long, slow sigh, his body settling deeper as your gazes both drift across the sacred squares. Whatever grows still here in this chamber feels like permission for your waking mind to soften a little, for your thoughts to crumple like linen, and for you to begin rehearsing not eternity, but tonight's small rehearsal for it. Dreaming. A faint rustle interrupts the chamber's slow rhythm. It isn't the soft tread of servants balancing trays, this time it's something lighter. Cautious, like a mouse sneaking crumbs. But when you shift your gaze, you see him, a courtier slipping in through the linen-hung doorway. He moves as though every inch of his step is an apology wrapped in politeness, but his eyes twinkle like a man who has spotted an irresistible opportunity. The Pharaoh, mid-game, relaxed and amused. Snack-stained robe and all. The newcomer bows so deeply you half expect him to topple forward into the honey cakes. His words are muted, but his grin flashes in brief rebellion. He wants to join your game. His presence is half plea, half challenge, and entirely mischievous. The Pharaoh raises one eyebrow, universal gesture of someone both inconvenienced and entertained. Will he allow it? Of course. It seems eternity has enough squares to accommodate one more player. He gestures lazily for the visitor to sit, and so the lids of jars clink, pawns shuffle to make room, and suddenly what was a meditative duet becomes a three-part harmony of rivalry. Here's your historical fact to fold in like a servant smoothing linen. Egyptian palaces weren't isolated, sterile spaces. They buzzed with courtiers, advisors, scribes, and rivals, each angling for attention. Even in leisure, a pharaoh's private chamber might attract ambitious eyes, eager for an opening. An impromptu Senet match could easily serve as subtle stage for jockeying rank, proving cleverness, or simply mending personal bonds. But here's the quirk worth a smile. In ancient Egyptian art, board games often appear in scenes of relaxation, even romantic encounters. Think of it, couples shown playing Senet together, flirting across pawns. That means what you're experiencing now could be as serious as cosmic rehearsal or as casual as the palace. Equivalent to Netflix and board. The courtier slides into position, trying just a bit, hard to look humble. You can practically hear his thoughts. If I win a round, the pharaoh will notice me. But you spot the mischievous shimmer in his eyes, calculation hidden beneath courteous bows. To him, this isn't simply about symbolic afterlives. It's the chance to score a small, temporary victory in front of Egypt's godnurse. The pharaoh, to his credit, doesn't mind. He tosses the sticks with a flick, as if to say, let destiny decide. Amusement spreads across his face. You sense he's seen many courtiers drift in, eager to curry favor through games, gifts, or gossip. Tonight, he treats this one not as rival, but as entertainment-like, inviting a half-asleep cat to chase a string, simply for curiosity's sake. The rhythm builds differently now. Toss, slide, sigh, toss, grin slyly. The chamber suddenly sparkles with brighter humor. The pharaoh chuckles audibly when the courtier is forced backward onto an unlucky square. You nearly laugh, too. Even near-divine beings apparently appreciate watching a rival retreat, pawn first. The atmosphere has shifted from solemn ritual into something slightly comedic. A little midnight farce beneath painted constellations. Historians still wonder about these moments. Were courtiers earnest in joining, or were their nerves wrapped tightly under smiles? Did pharaohs deliberately let them win sometimes, just to encourage loyalty? Or was it more honest, with rulers enjoying the occasional pettiness of whipping challengers at board games, cementing their rank gently without executions or speeches? We can't know. Only imagine the awkward throat clears when an overrider noble realized he'd beaten a man considered half divine. Asterisk, as play continues. You'll notice how quickly the third player turns awkward into theatrical drama, slapping his thighs when unlucky, gasping too loudly when luck favors him. He is treating this as performance art, but the pharaoh is generous with his chuckle. And beside him, you realize that immortality doesn't just belong to gods or games. It bubbles up whenever humans join together in laughter. Pawns sliding like sleepy comets. Asterisk, the extra company distracts you from your own nervousness. Suddenly, the pressure lifts. Whether you win or lose, you're just another piece in this night's comedy. The sticks rattle, the pawns tumble, the pharaoh chuckles, and the mischievous courtier vows too loudly that asterisk next throw will surely redeem him. Asterisk, asterisk, it doesn't, of course, but the performance entertains everyone, which is victory enough. The room has grown warmer, lamps low, cakes mostly eaten, and pawns scattered in uneven journeys along the wooden grid. You sense the game winding itself down, like a lullaby reaching its final, slow notes. The pharaoh sits deeper into his chair now, his hand resting lazily against one pawn, as though continuing takes too much effort. The courtier, still trying to look triumphant despite trailing behind, glances nervously for cues, but receives nothing more than a lazy smirk. It's clear, victory has become irrelevant. The game's purpose is softer, looser, quieter. Asterisk, you take another turn, sliding a pawn forward, wondering if it matters where it lands anymore. It doesn't. The pharaoh doesn't congratulate or admonish, you just lets the piece settle in silence, as if squares themselves are simply breathing with time. It dawns on you that this is the true end point of Senet, and perhaps of most games through eternity. Not winning, not showmanship, but reaching a place where every clink and move becomes background music, fading into a calm where no one even minds whose pawn crosses the finish. The whole room exhales. Asterisk. Here is a historical observation that bubbles up like incense smoke. Senet was frequently depicted in art, not mid-victory, but mid-play. Many tomb paintings show queens, nobles, even pharaohs hunched or gently leaning over boards with pieces still roaming. Maybe that was the point. They didn't need a painted winner. They needed the reassurance of timeless continuation, a game unfinished but eternal. Asterisk, the quirky detail worth your smile. Archaeologists, examining pawn positions, have sometimes found boards where the game was left incomplete, pawns frozen mid. Was that because the owner was interrupted and never returned? Or did they deliberately leave pieces unsettled, like a life paused? A reminder that games and journeys rarely conclude neatly. Scholars still wonder whether those partly filled boards symbolized eternal play, a match extended into forever. Asterisk, the pharaoh now shakes his head faintly, amused, then places his throw sticks aside. A deliberate pause. The game hasn't ended by triumph, it's ended by decision. And somehow, that feels even gentler. You glance toward the courtier, who fakes an exaggerated sigh of next time, pretending he hadn't been defeated. But you sense he secretly welcomes the pharaoh's mercy. Better to pause unfinished, still in play, than definitively beaten. Asterisk, it strikes you that this is how bedtime wraps itself around history. Children rarely demand every story finish with tidy closure. They enjoy when tales simply drift, allowed to stop mid-adventure. Egypt's rulers, you realize, practiced the same. Tonight's Senet isn't a contest with clear scorecards. It's a slow rehearsal for eternity's patience, punctuated by bites of honey cake and chuckling rivals. Asterisk, historians still puzzle if Senet's pause was always deliberate. Did pharaohs actually enjoy stopping short, declaring games simply enough? Or was that only a poetic notion embroidered later by scribes? It lingers as one of history's small mysteries, whether timelessness lay in incomplete rituals, or whether someone simply got sleepy enough to quit. Asterisk, the pawns remain where they are, silent companions on carved squares. They look as though they don't care what happens tomorrow. They're simply content to exist, like dream fragments that don't require conclusion. In that silence, you too feel your body sinking deeper into ease. It doesn't matter how close you came to winning. What matters is that the game itself created a rhythm, a pattern of thought and breath steady enough that sleep leans against your shoulder like an old friend. Asterisk. The pharaoh hums something low, a sound between a sigh and a laugh. He leans back, eyelids heavier, bracelets glimmering faintly. The courtier mutters something about destiny favoring him next time. Nobody bothers to argue. The match dissolves into comfortable stillness, each of you more wrapped in warmth than in uncertainty. Asterisk, in short, either you've won an eternal game tonight, or the game itself has won you, pulling you toward.com, regardless of outcome. And really, isn't that the sweetest form of victory? Asterisk, asterisk, the game board sits untouched now. Pawns frozen mid-journey like miniature travelers who have paused on the road to eternity, waiting for dawn. The sticks rest beside them, quiet as bones. Around you, the chamber has changed its rhythm again. The lamps burn lower, oil almost spent, and the air shimmers with that last stage of warmth before embers fall into sleep. Shadows slip long along the limestone walls, stretching like cats stretching into their final cozy curl of the night. Asterisk, the silence is deep here, yet alive. You notice the faint crackle of one oil wick struggling valiantly against the dark, as if it has promised itself to stay awake just to keep you company. But even flames, like mortals in games, eventually accept rest. Its glow sinks duller rounder, redder teeny suns fading into dusk. Asterisk, the pharaoh, heavy-lidded now, leans further into his carved chairbed. His jewelry still catches pinpricks of light, but lazily, like stars hiding at dawn. His head tilts slightly toward the ceiling, toward the painted constellations that are now half shadow, half memory of the skies. He's drifting. You realize, drifting into the same lull you feel pulling at your chest. You've not disturbed him, nor challenged him, nor worshipped him. You've only shared the common ritual of passing a night together. Perhaps this is the truest privilege of all. Asterisk, here's your historical fact, whispered like the last ember glow. Palaces like these were kept filled with incense at night, not simply for fragrance, but also to ward pests and entice calm. Cedars, myrrh, and resins became bedtime companions. Sleep itself, for Egyptians, needed its furniture. The air tonight is proof it smells faintly of earth and spice, clinging like linen around tired shoulders. Asterisk, and for the quirky detail, archaeological evidence shows that wicks were often made of twisted papyrus fibers or linen scraps, which means that somewhere, perhaps earlier today, someone in charge of palace upkeep muttered while folding cloth, "This will burn well tonight." Even in kingdoms ruled by God, someone had the very human task of ripping old shirts into lamp fuel. The divine really is stitched together from ordinary threads. Asterisk, the servants are quiet now, most having slipped away to their own quarters. Only one or two linger at the edges, fighting yawns with the loyalty of shadows. You imagine guards outside, leaning on spears, their eyes half closed, their bodies swaying with exhaustion in the warm air. The entire palace feels folded, tucked in, like papyrus bound with cords large eternal, yet momentarily comforted. Asterisk, historians debate whether pharaohs truly enjoyed quiet moments like these. Did the rituals of divinity allow personal rest? Or were their lives saturated with ceremonies so thickly that true silence felt rare? No scroll decides. Was there even privacy as we know it? It lingers as one of those pleasant mysteries where we imagine, because imagining comforts us. That god kings leaned back just like we do before, bed breathing out long, slow sighs and loosening any tension left in their immortal shoulders. Asterisk, a new smell enters. Faint, but impossible to ignore. Embers. Oil burns out, replaced by smoldering charcoal from small brazier bowls. They glow deep red, like the hearts of sleeping suns, painting the room not in brightness, but in reassurance. You listen to one ember pop, a childlike spark, leaping then dying before it could overstay. That simple pop cradles you deeper than silence could. Asterisk, your gaze drifts one last time to the Senet board, and it looks timeless. It doesn't matter that tonight's match sits incomplete. Its squares still radiate a low hum of patience. The pawns are unbothered tiny companions who will wait past centuries, indifferent to victory, content to rest mid-path, like you about to give in to dreams. Asterisk, the Pharaoh exhales more deeply, no body slack. Eyes shut, your unexpected playmate finally submitting to sleep. The ceiling stars above seem fainter, a soft somewhere outside. The real stars turn on their desert glow. And within this palace, eternity folds itself into embers, into fading color, into that sigh you feel in your bones when nothing else is required. Asterisk, here in this gentle dimness, time has slowed to its last sips. You are a guest not of history anymore, but of sleep's tender arms, where pharaohs and pawns, flames and painted skies, all dissolve into glowing threads of dream. The chamber is nearly dark now, bathed only in the faintest glow of quiet embers. The honey-sweet air has thinned, the chatter of servants faded, and even the mischievous courtier has slipped ghost-like out of the room, perhaps content to boast of his lucky moves to nobody in particular. What remains is a hush so deep it feels as if the palace itself has curled under a blanket, tucking its corridors into dreams. Asterisk, the Senet board rests where you left it, pawns lined in their half-completed journeys, awaiting hands they will never see again tonight. It doesn't matter. Boards like these are designed to outlast centuries. Eternal companions waiting patiently for whoever next decides to push a piece forward. In the drowsy flicker of fire, you realize it doesn't belong merely to the pharaoh, nor to courtiers, nor even to Egypt. It belongs to humanity, a reminder that wherever people have settled, they've also found ways to play. Asterisk, and so your thoughts stretch outward, floating gently beyond the palace walls. You picture other games born far away, equally nightbound, equally dreamlike. The ghost stones of ancient China spreading black and white galaxies across a wooden earth. The Patolia beans tossed across mats in Central America by players who bet with laughter and little tokens. Stick games of indigenous people across the Americas, where numbers leaped from marked bones. The cowrie shell boards of Africa, where nimble fingers danced through seeds like stars. The Polynesian games of stone or shell, carried across oceans alongside navigators' songs. Asterisk, here is your soft fact. Wherever trade moved, so too moved games. The Silk Road carried silk and spices, but also dice and ways to pass evenings. Coffles of ships on the Nile carried not just jars of grain, but echoes of laughter from sailors flipping small carved pieces. The history of leisure is inseparable from the history of survival. Entertainment was always a companion to endurance. Asterisk, and the delightful, quirky truth. Some archaeologists argue that rules weren't always part of what traveled. Instead, people often improvised with boards and materials, remaking rules as they wished, which means that the very same Senet board might have been played 3 different ways, in 3 different places. Imagine that eternity shaped not by divine decree, but by whoever muttered, "Eh." This rule seems fun tonight. Asterisk, historians still wonder about the grand origins of games. Was there one moment, long ago, when someone dragged a stick across the dirt and marked the first competitive squares? Or did these traditions appear everywhere, separately, because humans almost can't help themselves from drawing lines and declaring, "Your turn"? The debate continues, unanswered, and perhaps that's appropriate. Games feel too universal to pin down to one birthplace. Asterisk, you let your mind drift on this wide river of memory, spanning continents across time. Yet, as mighty as it flows, the river brings you back here, beneath an Egyptian ceiling painted with forever night. Back to this game sprawled half-complete and left in peace. The Pharaoh's soft breathing blends with the ember's last glow, and you realize that for all their grandeur and efforts to rule eternity, kings and queens also knew the same intimate truths you do this evening, that nothing soothes a day more than play, food, faint laughter, and the sigh that comes when night is too heavy to resist. Asterisk, the Senet board has fallen silent, but its silence feels like permission, too, as if the ancient squares are saying, asterisk, it's your move now, into dreams. Finish the game there. Asterisk, asterisk, the palace deepens into silence, deeper even than the halls you first wandered through. Lamps are nothing but faint memories. Shadows lie folded into the corners, and the painted stars have dimmed into gentle silhouettes overhead. The Pharaoh's chamber has shifted fully into sleep, and in truth, so have you. The game is finished, not on the board, but in your body, the rhythm of pawns and sticks transformed into a quiet, steady pulse within your chest. Asterisk, all around you, stillness drifts into stillness. Imagine yourself lying on cool stone worn perfectly smooth, the air like warm fabric resting on your face. Every exhale leaves your body softer. Every inhale gathers only the calm that remains in the room. You are no longer expected to play, or win, or even think. You are simply here, safely settled, as eternity folds its arms loosely around you. Asterisk, let your breath lengthen. Feel it slow, as if each inhale has more space to travel. Your shoulders loosen. Your eyelids glow faintly with the imagined stars overhead. The embers of the brazier pulse in your mind, like the last fireflies of the evening. They do not ask for attention. They only remind you that it is safe now to let go. Asterisk, you drift across time in the simplest way humans always have, with rest. The palace, the board game, the pharaoh, and even the mischievous courtier dissolve into distant ripples, as soft as the Nile at dawn. What remains is only peace. You are wrapped in it, as one is wrapped in linen folds, secure, timeless, unburdened. Asterisk, and when the last ember fully cools, you are already sleeping.